Welcome, welcome. We're just getting the room opened up. I am Cammy Bean, and I'm super excited to have you all here today. I'll give it a few minutes while the room fills up. I've got some special guests here today. We'll be introducing them in a few minutes. And I am wearing my favorite t-shirt. Hopefully you can all see it. Trust me, I'm an instructional designer. Trust me, I know what I'm talking about. So yeah, share a little bit in the chat. Who's here? Where are you from? My mom is coming on today. She won't be on video, but I'm going to give a special shout out to my mommy. She's here to celebrate my book launch today. And I am joining today from the beautiful spring day of Massachusetts here. I am in a little town called Littleton, Massachusetts. Oh, I love seeing the names. There's my mom, Susan Morrison. Hi, Mom. Rebecca Britt, great to see you. Jenny Evans. Oh, it's so exciting to see all these people. Robert, Rory, thank you for coming. Victoria, Simi, people from all over the place. This is really kind of overwhelming and super exciting. Thank you for being here. I'm everyone's going to say hi to Cammy's mom. Super excited to be celebrating today the launch, not of the first edition of the Accidental Instructional Designer, but the second edition of the Accidental Instructional Designer. I wrote this first edition back in, oh, can't see it, 2013. It was published in 2014. And fast forward to the pandemic, the year 2022, and it seemed like it made sense to update this book for a new generation of instructional designers, to spend a little time working through outdated technologies, updating references and resources, things that had gone out of date. I also expanded the book a little bit in the preceding almost 10 years since I wrote the first edition. My job has changed a little bit. So I'll tell you my story in just a moment here, but I am now an accidental salesperson, actually, and what that has meant is working at Kineo, where I work. I am talking to clients much earlier in the sales process and really helping understand, discover, architect needs at an early level. But it's meant that my view of L&D and training has really expanded and broadened beyond instructional design. So what are we going to do today? We are going to be having a quick chat with myself and my three special guests, who are all accidental instructional designers as well. I'm hoping that people will share your stories in the chat if you'd like to. If you'd like to win a copy of the Accidental Instructional Designer Second Edition, we're going to be pulling that from insightful stories in the chat, just to keep things exciting. So you have to contribute as well. And we'll be sharing a few little top tips as we go along. So my story, I was an English major in college and a German studies major. I had visions of becoming an English teacher when I graduated from college. I even applied to a master's program, but I got a job. This was in the early 1990s, just to date myself. And I got a job at a company, and I was doing back-end operations, doing research, running reports, and it was early days of computers, and we started setting up a new call center for our call agents. And it was going to be online. Well, it was actually going to be on a computer. So they had been using everything on paper at that point, right? This is 1992. And I helped design the system. I was translating user requirements to the IT team. And then it kind of just naturally fell in that because I knew the system so well that I would be the trainer. Does that sound kind of familiar? And then one thing led to another, and I left that company and I got a job at a multimedia development company in Massachusetts called VIS, which stood for Video Information Systems. I knew some people who worked there, and my first day on the job, I got a business card that said Junior Instructional Designer, and I got on a plane and I went to a bank in Washington, D.C. and ran my first content workshop. That was day one of that job. I had never heard of the job title of instructional designer up until that moment. Fast forward, 27 years later, it's been that I have been doing this. I have been the gamut across this whole business in terms of, always on the vendor side, supplier side, working at small e-learning shops, more boutique-y, freelancing. And then I started with Kineo in 2009, so almost 14 years ago, and I was the head of learning design for Kineo US. And then about 6 years ago, I moved into a sales role. So my role has been, it's very much evolved. It's never been a direct line. And I think like many of us, I kind of look around some days and go, wow, I did not know that I was going to be in this field, in this, in this space for the rest of my foreseeable career. But that kind of is what happens. And what happened for me around 2005 is I was going back to work full time after having my first child. And I was working at a small e-learning company, and it dawned on me that I was probably going to be doing this for the rest of my professional career, and that I should build some intention into my practice. And so at that time, I started reading voraciously. I started blogging. I started connecting with people online, building a community. And I learned that I didn't just have to be figuring this out on my own, but that there was a wealth of resources available to me. So in 2005, I made this really conscious choice to become a more intentional practitioner of instructional design. So that's a bit of my story. I'm super excited to hear what you all have to say in the chat, and I'm going to ask my contestants, I feel like it's a game show, to come on camera, and we're going to introduce them and hear from them. Caitlin Kessler, who is one of my favorite people who works at Kineo. Caitlin Kessler is out of Chicago. Caitlin, tell us your story.
All right. Well, my story is maybe not quite as long and circuitous as Cammy's. I think we share a little bit of a background in that I studied English creative writing in college, and I didn't aspire to be an English teacher. I thought I was going to make my living writing short stories, which would have been a beautiful thing to do, but just not super realistic. And a couple former classmates of mine from grad school actually were already working at Kineo, and they said, hey, we need another freelance scriptwriter. So it was really just about writing the words that go on the screen in the e-learning modules. And I said, okay, I'll give it a shot. My first project was about high-speed connectors, which is, thrilling. lots of stuff about widgets that I didn't entirely understand. But once I got past that project, once I got into some meatier stuff, some interesting, programs about bugs and birds and paint and, oddly enough, plumbing and electrical, I started to realize, this is something that fascinates me. And it evolved from just putting the words on the page to asking a lot of why. Why are we writing it this way? Who is this for? Why do they need to know how to do this stuff? And that curiosity just kind of naturally evolved into, well, I should probably be digging more into the design side of things. And now here I am, 6 years later, I'm in it.
And you're a learning experience designer. And I think really indicative of kind of the talent that we look for at an organization like Kineo. It's, many of us are accidental instructional designers, and we want to be able to form people into our own vision, I guess, to a certain extent. So Caitlin represented talent and writing, which is so important to what we do when we're creating digital learning experiences. You got to get the tone right. Caitlin does that super well, and having that innate curiosity is so essential to what we do. So here you are 6 years later, and you've really advanced your skills, and every project is different, isn't it? It's
absolutely,
it's so fun. Yeah. Let's bring on Rhonda next. Thank you, Caitlin. You can stay on camera. Yeah, Rhonda, welcome. And let's hear your story.
Yes. So the best way to describe my journey is it was more like climbing a rock wall versus climbing a corporate ladder. I had to navigate a series of challenges and shifting paths and adopting new skills along the way to achieve some of my goals. I was actually in sales before I entered the realm of learning and development. And I would say my aha moment, I was 8 months pregnant with my first son. And I locked myself out of my car, probably for like the 5th time, hours away from home. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. I've got to get back into the office. So a position opened up in our training and procedures department, and I took that role. I'm like, how hard can this be?
Famous
So
last words.
yeah, how hard can this be? I can do this. So during that time, I learned really quickly that there was a lot that went into that. And I learned everything about instructional design on the job. We had an amazing leader who came in, and we learned everything about the ADDIE model, Bloom's taxonomy, 4 levels of evaluation, while learning the authoring tools at the time. And we were chatting about this earlier, Dreamweaver and all of that. I was
Oh yeah.
called a web-based trainer at the time. I'm definitely going to date myself there. But I learned everything on the job as we went along. And I also decided at that time to go back to school. So I was literally drinking from the fire hose. And from there, it really led me to the path to other roles, such as training manager, principal, e-learning specialist. I was a global strategy lead. I was an L&D consultant, senior manager, director, but each one of those roles really posed their own challenges and required a unique skill set. So I would say through my journey, I haven't just expanded my knowledge and expertise in instructional design, but I had to collaborate cross-functionally within, with IT, UX, HR, our PMO, marketing, to really expand my skill set and my perspectives as I moved along. And there was no really prescribed clear path given to me. So I had to create my own way of navigating across that rock wall. And there were times I had to let go. There were times I lost my footing, and there were times I had to hang on for dear life. So I would say really the key in this field is being adaptable, being open to learning new skills as each challenge personally and professionally presents itself. And it really required me to step outside of my comfort zone and explore new areas of expertise. And I would say working cross-functionally has been completely invaluable. And it allows me to draw on those perspectives because our work is actually changing and evolving with new technology that we're being faced with. And the beauty of L&D is we're so versatile and we can specialize in so many disciplines. And I would say really just keep in mind that L&D is not always a linear path, and being adaptable, open-minded, and willing to take risks is actually essential in this field.
Oh, here. So Rhonda went from salesperson to accidental training person, web-based training person, and now you're director of learning and development at a 500-person company called the Channel Company.
Yes.
It's an amazing story. We did not know each other until 2 weeks ago when she commented on one of my posts about the book, and she said, "Oh, we used to read your book, as part of our book club when I first got started." And I was so blown away. I was like, "Rhonda, will you come to our session? It's going to be great just to hear from people who've really been impacted by it and are sharing your expertise. It's just fantastic. Thank you for your story." Trina Rima. Trina and I met years ago because we were both blogging back in the 2005s and 6s. We were accidental instructional designers, sharing our journey out loud in a very scary, personal way, which everyone was doing back then. It was really exciting times. Trina, what's your story? Who are you?
Well, I would say I am a serial dabbler. I was a frustrated art student who didn't get very far in art and design school because I had no money and no scholarship. So I was working full time and trying to put myself through school. And it was really hard. And I kept finding myself being thrown jobs that now that I look back on it, were essentially like the beginning stages of instructional design. So for instance, I took a class on graphic design and using InDesign. And at work, I mentioned that I had this skill. And the next thing you know, I was making job aids for tellers. I worked at a bank and I was making job aids for the tellers. And then they were like, "Hey, you're pretty good at presenting. Why don't you go teach customers how to put their deposits together for like pickup by the armored cars, because they have to be packaged in a certain way so that we can tell if the armored car guy like dug in there and grabbed a wad of money for himself." So anyways, long story short, I ended up finding myself through a series of jobs, PR firms, banks, marketing, manufacturing. I even briefly helped put on fashion shows. Like, I was doing a little bit of everything. No matter what, it always involved creating something, being creative, writing something, and being able to talk about it and help people understand what it was. And later on, I actually realized that there's a name for that. I met an actual for real instructional designer at work, and he was like, yeah, you're doing instructional design work. And I realized that, wait a second, I've been doing this for pretty much my entire professional career. And there's like a job that has a name that has designer in it. That's so cool.
And people can get master's degrees in it and go to school in it. And yet many of us are practicing with no clue about it for years, right?
Literally, who knew? I had no idea. And I remember telling people, like my mom, for instance, hey, I'm an instructional designer. I went and I got a certificate. and she was like, I don't know what that is. Explain to me what that is. And I feel like in life, if you manage to land a job that you have to explain to your mother and she still doesn't understand it, good on you. You've done something well.
My mom's on this call. She knows what I do now after all these many years, but yes. And Martin says his mom still doesn't know what he does 6 years on. Yes, it's always fun trying to explain what we do. It's gotten a little easier as things have changed. And Rhonda, we were talking about this earlier, like, you know, back when us old ladies of e-learning and instructional design got started, right? There weren't online courses. There weren't certificate courses where you could go. Things have really changed now where, you know, for many of you who've maybe just landed into this career, you can find an academy or a certificate program or a master's degree program with relative ease. Those resources did not exist for us. And Trina, what you mentioned too, though, is just you had these proclivities and these talents that people tap into. And that's often the story for a lot of people who land in instructional design. Rhonda, the same for you. Caitlin, you were a writer. Rhonda, you were a salesperson, so you had that subject matter expert. Caitlin had that writing experience. Trina, you had this, you could use a tool, you could explain a concept thing to people, right? So you end up, you get tapped. And it's why accidental instructional designers will never go away, because a lot of people don't know that instructional design is a field, even within corporations, right? Like they just think anyone can do training because we all went to school and we all got educated, not realizing that there's this whole practice behind it. We can have a debate if you need a degree or you don't need a degree. Ron, did you said you went back to school at what point? What was your degree in?
My degree is in psychology and business. So
yeah. And Trina, do you have any advanced degrees at this point? It's just all on the job.
I do not. It's all on the job. Yeah. Scrappy.
Yeah. Super scrappy, right? We figure it out as we go along. My bookshelf, which you can't see next to me, is filled with instructional design, e-learning books. You name it, they're all here. People like us tend to get super curious and read a lot. So I'd like to transition. We've got a few minutes left, but what's your top tip? What's your top tip for helping someone who's getting started in this career, either as a new practitioner or as someone who's looking to go from a more accidental, you know, randomized experience to one with a little bit more purpose and passion? Caitlin, what's your top tip?
I think my top tip taps into something that you kind of touched on a little bit earlier, Cammy, which is really, you know, this is a career that kind of revolves around being professionally curious. And especially when you're first entering into this industry, you're not going to know everything. And when you're working with subject matter experts in potentially a variety of industries, as we do, you know, as an e-learning vendor, you're not going to understand the subject matter. So just lean into that professional curiosity. Be comfortable saying, I do not understand this. Can you explain it to me? Because realistically, you know, first of all, it's setting realistic expectations with the people you're working with, right? You're not claiming to have a level of expertise that you actually don't, but it also really puts you in the mind of the learner. If I, as an instructional designer, do not understand what someone is saying to me about objectives, about the content, it's more than likely that at least one or two learners are going to be confused by that too. So it really ultimately serves the audience that you're trying to target with that training.
Bravo. And Caitlin, question for you. How many job offers have you gotten from clients who've been like, wow, you really get this stuff. You should come work for us.
A fair handful. And
right?
really, being able to build those types of relationships with customers is one of the most rewarding things that we get to do, I think, as instructional designers, just building that level of trust where they feel like, yeah, if you're going to make a recommendation, we believe that it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, here. Well, we want to keep you at Kineo though, so don't go work for them, but keep that curiosity. It's amazing.
Absolutely.
Rhonda, aside from climbing rock walls and being willing to scale both vertically and horizontally at any point in your career, because L&D is such a huge, massive place and you can go in so many directions. What's your next tip? You've been sharing many.
I really digging into working cross-functionally and pulling in those disciplines into the work that you're doing. I would say that's my biggest tip. If you can expand your knowledge that way, and especially, I mentioned it before, the UX team, like we're interacting digitally, we're creating digital experiences. If we're ignoring the UX discipline or information architecture and how we're structuring our content, we're missing the whole point of what we're doing. So we've got to be able to partner with those teams, but also pull those disciplines into what we're doing.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's one of the reasons why I've always loved this field too. It's like you kind of get to be the maven and the connector, right? Like you translate from, what these people are saying over here to this person saying over here. And that might be the subject matter expert. You're translating their vision to the novice learner or the IT people who need to understand how this fits into the larger learning ecosystem that you're architecting at your organization. Yeah, it's a lot of collaborating, a lot of connecting, and yeah, I don't know, instructional design maven. Maybe that should be on my t-shirt next. Trina, what's your top tip?
Oh, it's hard to pick just one. I might slip two in. I apologize. So one top tip. Okay. One top tip is design inspiration is all around you. So if you are feeling like, I just don't know how to communicate about this topic, I always tell people, get out of your head, get out of your chair, get to a museum, walk around, especially something like a science museum where there's interactive exhibits. I find so much inspiration in interacting with the world around me using technology, especially because I feel like that takes a special sort of framing to think about how to reach someone from a digital perspective. And then likewise, I really feel like it's important for people to understand that you're designing your entire project, not just, especially with e-learning, it's not just about designing the output. You are setting up the conversation with your subject matter expert. You are getting them on board. You're designing the processes that you're going to follow to deliver the final product. So think about design more holistically and not just about, making a PowerPoint look pretty. So I think that that's my big top tip right there. Is that two or one? It might just be one. I don't know.
It's endless. It's countless. Yes. My top tip is, I think it connects to what all of you have said, and you've probably heard me talk about this. This is in the book. I talk about learning pie. This came from my dear friend, Dr. Ellen Wagner, so I can't take full credit for this, but I don't know, back in 2007, I was speaking with her and Corrine Ulbrich on, I think we called it the secret handshakes of instructional design. It was at a learning solutions conference in Orlando, one of my first. It was so exciting to be up there with such amazing people. And Ellen really got me thinking about the skills that we need to work with in this field. You come into it with a view to learning and pedagogy, right? We need to understand instructional strategies, how to write assessment questions, how adults learn. That's a whole segment of this pie that, you can go get a PhD in writing assessment questions, but we need to have that understanding of, how does instruction work? How do people learn? There's also this creative piece of the pie, which we've all touched on a little bit, right? We've got to, not the jazz hands of learning because that's distracting, but creating strong narratives, amazing stories, great visuals that are on brand. It could involve game design, video production, animation production. There's such a creative side to what we do. And I've always loved that in this field. Katrina, you came from art school, right? Caitlin, you're a creative writer. Like this is just kind of in our blood. If we're trying to create these digital experiences that truly engage, you need to think about those creative skills. Of course, there's the technology piece, and that's only growing as a piece of the pie every year, right? You've got to think in terms of learning management systems and SCORM and XAPI and data and analytics, and now AI and VR. Like it's just the tools, the authoring tools, testing. Like there's a lot there. That's a piece of the pie that I've always stuck my fingers in and kind of said, la, 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 I'm not a technical person. I'm a writer. I'm an English major. I've had to learn that piece of the pie quite a bit over the last few years. And then finally, there's this business segment of the pie. And, Rhonda, you came in as a subject matter expert. So you had that subject matter expertise. And Trina, you got tapped for writing the job aids, right? Because you knew that job so well. But there's also consulting skills. There's performance consulting. There's running an e-learning project or a training project with a business project plan. How many of you have been a project manager in a various former life too as an instructional designer? Okay, not my core skill set. If you know me, I'm not that detail oriented, right? Don't trust me with a Gantt chart, please. But often, managing budgets, that often falls into the realm of the instructional designer, particularly if you're at a one-stop shop. So my tip, this is a long explanation for my tip, but really is to think about this broad pie and develop a deep skill, find your sweet spot. You can think of it as a T-shaped expertise. You got to have broad general knowledge across all of it, and you're probably going to develop some deep understanding in a few key areas. Don't feel overwhelmed if you're getting started. You don't have to know all of the pieces all at once. However, if you get into this because someone at your company says, oh, you're really good at PowerPoint, you should be developing courses in articulate storyline. And now you call yourself an instructional designer, know that there's this whole big pie out there. And to get that broader knowledge, I would say, in a bit of the updates to the book in this last edition is me having broadened my pie. I broadened my pie. So we're kind of wrapping up here on time. I want to thank everyone. If you have ordered the book at pre-order, thank you so much. It was just great seeing all the support out there. I think it is shipping today, so that we will find this in your mailbox today if you did order it on pre-order, which is very exciting. I got my copies in advance. So I've been able to look at it for the last couple of days. If you read it and love it, please post a 5-star review on Amazon. That does really well for book sales and keeps it at the top of the list. If it's only a 2-star review, maybe keep it to yourself. Are you allowed to say that? No. 5-star reviews only. I really am so grateful to my guests here today, Caitlin, Rhonda, and Trina. It's been so wonderful to have you. I'm excited to go back and read all of the chats and hear what your stories are. It's wonderful to share this experience with you all, and I'm so grateful for all of your support. I hope the book is useful to you. We will be doing a drawing based on people who've put their notes and comments in the chat, so somebody will get a free copy of the book. And I just want to thank you again. I'm so excited, really, really thrilled to be on this journey with all of you as I continue to go from accidental to intentional practitioner. So thanks so much for joining. We will see y'all soon.